friends, Fever fans, welcome back to another Fever Replay podcast. Your home for a breakdown of recent Fever games and what's going on with your favorite ladies on the court. I'm once again joined by my lovely and extremely talented co-host, Keisha Gallagher, and this podcast, once again, is brought to you by the love of the game. If you're gonna do it anyway, do it for the love of the game. Keisha, how are you today?
I'm doing well. How are you, Chris?
I'm doing well. It's very unrelated to the fever, but I am in fact doing well. You know why I'm doing well? The Pacers at least are going to the finals, and that's very exciting. This is very much not an NBA podcast, but around here, it is a very exciting time, and people are very locked in to basketball in general, which makes me happy. So why are you doing good, though, Keisha?
Well, it is the start of Pride, which is always just a fantastic time. And as we were somewhat discussing earlier, it is always really great to start off with a lot of WNBA.
Mm-hmm. It feels like those worlds are intertwined, maybe. I think that's fair to say.
Synergy, connection.
Agreed. So our girls aren't doing too good, though, out there on the field, out on the field of play, we'll say. The Fever are having some trouble without Caitlin. I think that's fair to say. And my major takeaway from watching them is what I see as a team that has a brand new coach, has a very new roster, and are trying to find what their roles are out on the court. And I think that wasn't really hidden by having Caitlin present before. I think that Caitlin is an exceptional distributor of the basketball, that her court vision and her basketball IQ kind of accelerated that process of getting this current version of the team together. And we saw that. We didn't see like perfect basketball when we had Caitlin, but we saw good basketball, exciting basketball that we're like, ooh, I want to watch where this goes. And then you take her out, and it's not like any of these ladies are less talented. It's more just like, okay, where do we fit now? This thing that we were all plugged into, this like ball distribution machine that we had, isn't there. How do we get things going? How do I get the ball where I want to get the ball? How do we do this? Who does it? We had a lot of questions the last two games and not a ton of answers. What were your first thoughts from these games?
Oof. I think there was a lot of, kind of similar to what you're saying, is what do we do when X, Y, and Z are not options? I think there were a lot of growing pains, specifically when it comes to what a roster is presenting you. The first game that they faced this week against the Mystics, I just felt like they didn't really have any answer or solution to the number of post players they saw. And I thought that was pretty evident in the percentage of points that you saw in the paint, and as well as overall shooting percentage not being super dramatic. It really was just second opportunities, the offensive rebounds. I think it just looked in general like there was a struggle. That connectivity and that secondhand knowledge of where players are going to be, that's really hard to establish when everyone has to kind of step up into those new roles.
Agreed. Yeah. How we're going to look at this, me and Keisha kind of decided looking at it, we're just going to talk about both games kind of together. So last week the Fever played first the Mystic, and then after that, they played the Sun. Neither game they won. It was rough, to say the least. Both games had a very similar sort of feel to them, where the first half was fairly competitive and the second half really got away from them. And both games felt bad to watch. So we decided, let's just mix those two together. Since they have so many similarities, we're going to talk about them both together. So let's throw it to you first, Keisha. Get us started on what are we looking at here?
Well, I think we could start with a positive, and that was a huge milestone for Dwana Bonner with, I think it was first player to reach, what was it, 7,500 points,
Correct.
3,000 rebounds, and 1,000 assists in the history of the WNBA. So that's pretty
Which
exciting.
is a huge accomplishment.
Right.
That is
Huge.
a really big deal and very exciting for her.
And I think, okay, so just with that being a positive, that is great. It's great when your more senior players still have that sort of impact at this point. And she was the high scorer for that Mystics game with, I think, 21 points. So it's just, I think it's great that resource is there. It's finding the right plays and getting into some sort of rhythm. I think that's really the overall struggle that I saw. And it doesn't help, again, having Clark out and then multiple injuries in the next game. That does not make it any easier.
No, it doesn't. It was fantastic in these two games to see Bonner do what she does best. We haven't really seen it all year, not a long year, not a lot of games, but we haven't seen it yet on this current Fever team. But Bonner looked really sharp. She looked really good. She just felt like she was having fun even and being aggressive and feeling herself out on the court. Like there were a couple times she'd do like a head fake or like a little like, oh, I'm going to pass, but then she goes up for it. It was really cool and something that we really need. And what made us competitive, at least in the first half, was she definitely played a huge role in that, 100%. Also, so I saw some other good things. One, I found that Colson was, when she was playing and when we were featuring her, which I would say both first halves, I found her to be a creative playmaker. Like, she's definitely not Caitlin Clark. When we picked her up, that was something that Stephanie had talked about. Coach Stephanie White had talked about that they knew they weren't going to fill Caitlin's role when she's not on the court, but they wanted somebody that could play with pace, that was comfortable handling the ball, and knew what she was doing. And we have that in Colson. We got to see a lot more minutes with her. And I felt like when we were having her run our offense, I thought to myself, this is good. Like, if this wasn't what was happening the whole time, if this was just happening in spurts throughout a competitive game, I love this. So I felt like I got a lot of good answers out of Sydney Colson while she was playing.
I agree. I think that there has been just sort of this awkward formation of these different lineups. I think you're kind of forced to keep pulling players off the bench, trying to fill in these gaps, especially when there are these injuries occurring again. And I think that what Sid brings in speed also complements Caitlin and also complements Kelsey Mitchell. So even though there is a different feel and a different vibe coming from how Sid plays, we're still working with that same pace. So I think that she was a great addition to the style that the Fever really has been leaning into since the beginning of the season.
If you didn't watch the games, she's currently injured, as well as Sophie Cunningham. Those hurt us a lot. So we have, as far as guards, our starting point guard is out, Caitlin Clark. Our backup point guard is out, and then they were calling her the emergency backup, which is Sophie, is now out as well. So we don't actually have like a point guard currently on our roster, which is kind of frustrating. We have people who can do it. Lexi can do it. Kelsey can do it. It's not really what they would prefer to be doing. It's not really their strength. But they both have the skills to be able to do it. So one thing, the Fever have the ability to sign one more player in a hardship clause, which is a sucky place to be so early in the season. But because we only have 8 active players right now, if you're under 10 active players, you're able to sign somebody. So I wouldn't be surprised if we saw somebody signed even just for this week. The good
Right.
news is the last game was 2 days ago now. So we've heard back. They both got scans. They both look good. Coach Stephanie White said that we are day to day with both ladies. So, not bad. They both got injured. It sounds like the lowest level of injury that could have happened. It's not great, and it's the same ankle that Sophie hurt before. So there are concerns. There's lots of concerns.
Well, and you also have to still take into consideration that with the kind of injury that Caitlin has, the estimated date that she's set to return isn't really that. It's her next evaluation.
Mm-hmm.
So
Correct.
if they still determine that she's not ready, we could be looking at potentially another week of being down 3 players, or at least still not having your best options for point guard. So hopefully it is good news and everyone is in a better position come game time. But, I mean, it is early in the season, so kind of similar to our last conversation with early injuries, is it better to have them now or to potentially have them towards the end of the season when you're running out of games to play? It sucks either way, but
It's not great.
yeah, it's not great.
So as far as this, are we league worst in free throws? Is that the case? I wrote down league worst 63 coming into the game. I think that's free throws.
It has not been
It's
a
been
strength
bad.
as of late, and especially it's something that for the amount of time that I played, a lot of coaches would refer back to free throws when we had close games, and it's very frustrating when you lose by 2 points and you miss 3 free throws. So it's not to say that those points automatically guarantee the W, but it is pretty demoralizing when you missed those free opportunities, and these were close games. There wasn't, I mean, if we kind of just look at the Sun game, Connecticut was shooting from the field 51%, almost 52. We were shooting 49. 3-point, they were shooting 50, we were shooting 41, so there's a little discrepancy there. But free throw, 86 for the Sun, 85 for the Fever. Had the same amount of rebounds. Assists were very similar. Steals were similar, same amount of blocks. Like, there weren't these huge gaps of, wow, they gave it away, or they were completely out of the game, huge comebacks, but it just wasn't enough. And that's, again, really challenging when your bench is depleted.
Yeah, that was kind of my feeling, and why I feel like both games kind of went similarly, where we were in the game and then all of a sudden we weren't. We were able to be in the game. That's the level of scoring and defense we were able to do, is that kind of maintenance level. If it's a close game, we'll stop a couple times, we'll be able to score. But when the other team hit a streak, we were not really able to respond to the streak with our own. That's what I was seeing. And so once we started getting in trouble in the games and we're looking for answers, how are we going to get back in this, there essentially were no answers. It was we don't have a way to get back in this. We can maybe get a few stops. We can continue to score. They're not going to stop us from scoring, but we weren't going to be able to just completely put the brakes on the other team and just go on a nice little run to get us back in the game. That didn't seem like a speed that we were able to hit as a team.
No, and unfortunately, I mean, I guess, again, the positive being that the Mystics game, they played not their best. You definitely saw improvement going into the game against Connecticut, but that's another snapshot of what performance could look like when you're relying on certain rosters to be available, and maybe this was the wake-up call that was needed to say we need to work on those combinations. We have to put out odder options just so that we have that experience, and it's not so... I felt very foreign on the court. I felt like there was a lot of fluidity against their opponents showing, where the opponents seemed to know each other a little bit more. And again, I think it just was the combinations were just not that common, and it read uncomfortable.
Yeah, that's kind of what I was saying. I feel like what we saw was a new team without the catalyst of Caitlin Clark. And I mean
Hmm.
catalyst, like, not necessarily like taking away the fact that she is her own engine, that she has her own points that she scores, that she's productive completely on her own. But she has this ability to be a catalyst for our offense and for our players. Each one of our starting lineup players and some of our bench are just absolutely flat out fantastic basketball players who really have some strengths that need to be reckoned with by the other team. But what I saw in the last two games was we weren't able to get those players consistently to their strength when we needed
Hmm.
to. And I feel like that was really a sign of like this team hasn't bonded and found out how to do that like on its own yet. It was like sped up, like I said, by Caitlin Clark, which makes sense. She is absolutely as good as she is at everything else. She's truly legendary, I would say, at distribution. That's something that
Hmm.
we haven't even begun to see. I think the tip of the iceberg. Because last year she was great, but we all know she had a lot of turnovers too. There's tons of room for improvement there. Um, and I think we see that. We saw that here. And like you were kind of going into, we did get a lot of answers and were put in a pretty uncomfortable place last week that I
Hmm.
think is good for a team early in the season. To have to ask yourself these kinds of questions. How do we get the ball where it needs to be? How do we feed Aaliyah Boston in the paint? That was something we did not have an answer for. And there was a really interesting thing we tried, I think, with the Mystic. We decided to start, not with the Mystic, it was with the. That was a really interesting thing that we tried with the Sun. Was we tried initiating the offense through Boston above the nail, which was, I was like, huh, look at that. And it worked for a little while, because Boston knows what she's doing. She's very talented. Anyone else they're going to put up there, she's going to be able to beat. So we were kind of running this reverse version of the two-man game that we normally see with Caitlin and AB. But instead, we're having her run it. But that led to some problems as well. Because all of a sudden we were getting like no rebounds. And I was like, what is going on? And we kept seeing smaller bodies down there. And I'm like, where's AB? And I'm like, oh, right, AB's at the top. We're not seeing her down low, which hurt us in a big way, I think. It was an interesting like concept that I think worked for a couple minutes. And that's the thing, like, so we're seeing people on the floor that aren't going to be on the floor together for 30 minutes. We're seeing all these rotations that are supposed to be on the floor together for like 5. And I think we got a
Right.
lot of good film for like 5-minute spurts. But I think the other team very quickly was like, oh, we know how to deal with this. That's not too hard to solve. Um, yeah, I don't know. That's what I saw. I don't know. What?
No, it was a pretty frustrating week. I mean, when it comes to the Mystics, I think they did not have solutions for the depth of post player available, and their posts were just getting beat up by Aaliyah Edwards and Shakira Austin, and it was just hard. It was hard. It was a battle,
Mm-hmm.
but the depth there and the amount of options that they had, it was just. I didn't really see a way for there to be success if they could not figure out a way to stop Kiki, and it just was not happening that night. I mean, that happens. There are just times when the pieces aren't falling together. But hopefully, going into this next week, there will be lots of film to review. There will be lots of strategies going on, wondering what the depth of the bench is going to be like. So I think there's going to be a lot of creativity and probably some interesting lineups to come as they try to figure out what this is gonna look like, especially because this upcoming game is going to be against the Mystics. So what have we learned? Are we prepared? What will that look like, and who's going to be available?
I think that is one of the positives coming out of this is I don't feel like, oh, this just isn't a talented enough group of players. or even that they can't play together. That is not the feeling I got. I felt like this team, they worked. Like, we know for a fact that in training camp, they were running things with Caitlin in there. So this is a brand new problem that they are just starting to figure out how to solve. And I do feel like between the talent on the floor and between our coach, we're going to see a lot of answers. And then at the end of the day, like we kind of talked about, is this going to be a problem, us getting too gelled without Caitlin? No, I'm realizing watching it, no, it's not going to be a problem. It'll be great to have all of these answers in our pocket. To late in the season, when hopefully we have everybody healthy and we need to go to some sort of weird off-speed pitch sort of lineup, we'll have it and we'll know how to do it, and they'll be like, that thing that we did back in June, yeah, let's do that thing. It's going to work in this situation. I do feel really hopeful in that. I think it's really obvious from this conversation that I am not in general feeling the most hopeful. It was very frustrating to watch. Mm-hmm. But I do see a light at the end of the tunnel. I do see that there's a lot of room for growth, which is a good place to be when your roster looks like it is. It's not like we're doing the absolute best we can do and we're getting beat. No, execution was down, both the last two games. There were little bobbles. There were missed layups. Like, it wasn't just that. It wasn't all just formational, like, team build problems. I think everyone is off their game. And that's frustrating, but also very understandable. They are put in a tough situation right now.
No, as a Phoenix Mercury fan, Kai Copper's been out the entire season. Alyssa Thomas just went out, and those are two huge players for us. So I think it's just, unfortunately, it's a slow-growing issue that just hits teams at certain times, and it's infuriating. Certain lineups you don't get to see, they're playing against folks you know that they can dominate against, and it just doesn't happen. So just trying to imagine that everyone who has been dealing with injury is healing and is taking the rest that they need.
Absolutely. Okay, so before we get into our upcoming games this week, we're going to take a quick break and we'll be right back. Feeling stressed? Take a moment to breathe. With just 2 minutes of guided deep breathing, you can reset your focus and calm your mind. Try it now. Inhale deeply and exhale. Wow. Ready for more peace in your day? After daydreaming about what your favorite women's basketball team would look like if their stars were healthy? Me too. Me too. Deep breathing. It's always there for you. All right, we're back. This week, we have the Mystics again. And after talking to you, Keisha, I've decided I do feel hopeful about this Mystics game. I think that was a winnable game. And even if we just hit some free throws, we might have been in that one. So you know what? Maybe we'll do that. And then it looks like on Saturday, the 7th of June, we're going to be playing the Sky again. So we're seeing a lot of similar faces to begin the year. Maybe that's a good thing. Maybe that'll help us, like, kind of the consistency on the other side will help us kind of tweak what we're doing on ours. But what do you got for us, Keisha?
Well, I think now that we're getting back into the options of seeing some of these folks again, I do hope that we are looking at film and studying, getting prepared, because especially a team like the Mystics, they just have so many options. There's just so many different cards they can pull. They do have the Shakira Austin available, Stephanie Dolson, Aaliyah Edwards, Emily Inksler, as well as Kiki Iriafin. They all play the same position, and they're all so very different, and they bring different threats onto the court. And that's just their bigs. Then you have Lucy Olson, who can get hot behind the three. Brittany Sykes, who's on a heater, who's just scoring and stealing and blocking and gets up in the air like a freakazoid. And then Sonia Citron, who she can drive, she can shoot, she can facilitate. I feel like the Mystics last season definitely weren't as strong, and people tend to overestimate their bench against theirs. So that again is going to be a tough game, but we have to fix those issues from the previous round.
Yeah, I mean, the first look for me at the Mystic, I was impressed. It's a big improvement from last year. Citron looked extremely composed out there. I was like, This is she's brand new to this league. She didn't seem like she was brand new. She was making some really big plays, and it was very impressive. They're a good team this year. So that'll be a good one for us to continue to improve on. What about the Sky? Our second try at the Sky.
With the Sky, I think that some of the folks you got to watch out for include, and kind of start with Courtney Vandersloot, because she has the skill to make incredible passes. She also is really great at attacking the basket. She finds these really incredible angles on her drives. So she's going to really dictate what the game looks like. And then Haley Van Lith is healthy, Angel Reese is healthy, Kia Nurse is healthy, and Cardoso's healthy. So a lot of players who were having some issues in the last few seasons, they're on newer teams, but they are ready. And another big threat that is looking better and better would be Ariel Atkins. She is attacking, and she is aggressive. So this is not going to be a walk in the park with or without Caitlin, with or without Sid and Sophie. It's going to be a competitive week, and hopefully most of those folks are back.
That just makes me so sad. Okay, friends. So we're going to be with you with all the highs and the lows of the Fever season. So you know what? If that's what you need, if you just need some people to be sad with after a tough week of basketball, we got you here. We try and keep things a little bit positive. So if you like to be kind of a griefer and scream, you're not going to get that out of us. But we're going to be with you.
Not on air.
Not on air. But trust me, there's plenty of screaming and frustrations that happen in the text chat. So, there's always that. Anyway, Fever fans, thank you for sticking with us with another episode of Fever Replay. We absolutely love getting to do this with you guys, and we're excited to see where this season goes and where this podcast goes. So we'll see you next week, and hopefully we got good news for you.
Let's go, good news.